Wednesday, April 17, 2024. I had settled into a new routine. Up about 6 a.m., usual breakfast but with no fruit, bucket bath, coffee on the patio, check the news. BBC reported both China and North Korea had lodged formal UN complaints against America for being accused of causing the blackout. China had closed the South China Sea to American shipping, and North Korea said it would attack Guam with a nuke. I was itching to do something because of the news and also had cabin fever. It had been several days since I had last ventured out, so being an idiot, I was determined to get eyes on what, if anything, was happening down below. I refused to drive my car again, so I got my son Brian's old 1986 Suzuki Dual Sport motorcycle. I rode it around the neighborhood and up and down the hill about once a month or so. It was actually an antique with low miles. It was as old as Brian and was bought used in 2001. When he left home, the bike stayed. It was a classic, like me. I had this personal dream, a secret fantasy really, of someday riding the 5,000-mile, coast-to-coast, off-road Trans-America Trail. I even bought a small single-wheel motorcycle trailer that is made for off-road use. I could just see it now, a 20-pound overweight, 60-something bearded old guy with white hair riding an antique Suzuki pulling a trailer for 5,000 miles across the entire nation. That's crazy. Perhaps, but it did sound like crazy good fun. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I put on my backpack and I'm off to see what was new in the world. The weather was perfect. It felt good to be moving. At the bottom of the hill, there were 2 abandoned cars blocking the entrance to the highway. I saw a couple of people looking at the cars and stopped to talk. They weren't the drivers and said they lived in that lower neighborhood. The only thing they knew was that those cars had been there for several hours. They were both upset. One was loudly mad at the lack of authorities, and the other one nervous and didn't say much. I wished them well and headed out. Traffic was very slow, but on the bike I didn't care. After about 4 miles the traffic was stopped and drivers were out of their cars, just standing around in the road. Nothing was moving again. I rode on, but stopped short at the grocery store parking lot entrance. What I saw was frightening. The market was being looted. Its windows were broken. People were fighting and stealing from each other. There were no police. It was total chaos. This was a bad idea being here. I knew I would never be coming back here again, turned around and got out of there as fast as I could. Thank God I had enough food and water stored to last me for a while. On the ride home, my mind was racing. When I got home, I poured a cup of cold coffee and went to the patio to think about what I had just seen. I tried Fred on the radio. Damn, where is he? Heard some chatter about looting and shooting. People were really losing it all over, it seemed. It was all bad news. To free up my mind, I turned my attention and energy to some needed household chores. I did the laundry using buckets of soapy pool water and laid the rinsed clothes on the warm concrete pool decking to dry. I only had a couple of clothespins. My mother had had a big hanging bag of clothespins. When I was a boy, my family didn't have a clothes dryer. My mother hung the laundry on the line in the backyard to air dry in the warm sun. Those dried clothes were stiff, but had a wonderful natural fresh scent that I can almost smell even today. I then turned my attention to the kitchen. I wanted to keep my trash buildup at a minimum, so I wasn't using disposable plates, glasses, and utensils. I washed the dishes that had been soaking in soapy water for a week. The dead refrigerator was all but empty. A few vegetable perishables not eaten were buried in the garden yesterday. I'm concerned about the freezer section. I kept a couple of gallon jug ice blocks in it for all the 2 common power failures. But 6 days? I haven't opened it yet. Glad it's not the heat of summer. I then went back outside. Franklin was waiting for me on the back fence. Ravens have a rich collection of calls and other vocalizations, which I am sure have individual meanings and context. You could call it a language, but for now no one knows for sure. He had one group of gestures and sounds that always went together. It would start with the front of his neck vibrating, then his head feathers would puff up. His head would dip while his shoulders raised his wings, and finally out would come a series of 3 clicks and a hiccup. I think he meant he really wanted something. If I sat on the patio with food but didn't feed him, he would always make this gesture. I think he was saying something like, "What's wrong with you? Feed me." Someday we will understand animal languages. Ironton Labs, using artificial intelligence, had already translated dolphin language. Its 4 areas of context were eating, mating, socializing, and danger. To the disappointment of researchers, they weren't doing math problems. For dinner, I set out the last of the cheese, some crackers, and opened my best bottle of Cabernet. It was the last one from that little winery Mary and I had visited up the coast just before she died. We had been saving it for a special occasion that never came, but I wanted to still share it with her. She felt very close this evening, as if she was just in the next room. I needed her touch and smile. I was very troubled about the looting I saw today, and Mary had always been able to center me. I watched the sunset, enjoyed the wine, listened to some music, and sat out on the patio long into the lingering twilight, looking down at the dark city below and bright stars above. I saw fewer houses with generator power each night. I didn't think a generator was practical. The gas ones, even the natural gas, are loud, needed to be vented, and run out of fuel. Solar ones are marginal at best. But if you had little kids and they needed to be reassured that it's all going to be okay, or needed power for a specific project, I could see the benefit. Unfortunately, night at light also makes you a target, a beacon for the bad guys. It was only me here, and like I said, I had stockpiled a lot of batteries, both single-use and solar. I used the camping lantern for moving around at night, and flashlights for finding things in drawers. I also had a headlamp for hands-free use. But for writing my journals, I had always used a candle. It felt timeless. It was like a little flame companion that was a part of my writing process. When I wrote my books 20 years ago, I had a candle burning then too, even though there were lights in the room and I used a computer. Sometimes I would just stare into the flame if I got stuck or had a problem. That little flame always held the solution. My mind kept flipping from thought to thought. I saw the images of the grocery store over and over. I was glad to be removed from that craziness. I guessed my internal clock had adjusted because it was only 10 o'clock, but I was tired. I went to bed, hoping I could sleep.